While Zed and the Mobius left a lot to be desired in terms of their villainy, N&M were phenomenal with compelling backstories and emotional monologues, tugging at our very heartstrings. Even so, they are shrouded in many mysteries that may leave you confused and searching for answers. If this includes yourself and I've done my job correctly, then by the end of this video you will understand all of N's previous memories, how Noah and N became two separate people, as well as knowing the truth behind the disappearance of Territorial Rotbart. So with all said and done, let's jump right into the video. Noah and N can be described as two sides of the same coin, in that they are technically the same person, but different versions of him. Your initial reaction may be to assume that this has something to do with the cradles and the will of Mobius, recycling bodies and souls so that the war can be maintained for all eternity. This would be incorrect, however, as one of the rules of becoming a Mobius is that you are taken out of the flow and are no longer able to be reborn when you die. Even this isn't necessarily applicable either, however, considering N has yet to meet his end, and yet there is still another Noah. So if this isn't how he was created, then how? Well, Noah and Mio possess a unique and strange ability, which is what allows them to return regardless of the scenario. It's so powerful as to even allow them to reincarnate after their homecoming, where most would usually meet their end.
Your two lives, thriving and persisting far beyond homecoming, surpassing the system of the world. I was fascinated, even beguiled by you.
As pointed out, this is partially the reason why Zed took such an interest in Noah and eventually offered him the opportunity to become a Mobius. This ability can also be visualized as white light, which shrouds their bodies before dissolving them completely, something that normally doesn't happen. When people die in Ionios, a red life energy is released, as you're probably all familiar with. On the other hand, when people reach the end of their 10 years, the life energy released is actually golden, regardless of whether they are being seen off in a ceremony or not. As for the reason why Noah and Mio have this ability, the answer is unclear, but I would speculate that it has something to do with A, Noah and Mio being part of the founders, the first to obtain Ouroboros, or B, because Noah had the ability to still move around in the real world for a brief amount of time before Ionios was first created. Either way, this is likely to be something clarified within the DLC story for Xenoblade 3 at the end of 2023, so we'll just have to wait till then for that particular answer. It's because of this power, however, that Noah was still able to be born. The process of becoming a Mobius and this power activating has one main similarity, in that Noah has to die, and so it was in this moment when Noah, now known as N, choosing to protect the Endless now and becoming a Mobius, split into two, leaving his hope behind, which would eventually birth into Noah, whilst the rest of him became Mobius. The same is also true for Mio and M as well, with the only difference being that they were not given the choice of if they wanted to transform. On top of that, it's also a reference back to Xenogears. The main character of that game, Faye, also has another self known as Graf. Also similarly, Graf was once known as Laken and changed his name when he lost hope due to his waifu's death, just like Noah taking up the name N after seeing Mio perish over and over again. I really wasn't joking all those times when I said this game is exactly like Xenogears. Faye and Graf's gears, the name of the mechs in this game, are also both named Weltol, much like how Noah and N both wield a version of Lucky 7, but we'll take a look at how both can own the same sword later in the video. So how was Noah able to see N's memories in the first place? Well, it all started during the fight outside of Legate prison, when Noah and the gang were first facing off against N&M. M's Mobius ability allows her to temporarily embody another person, hijacking their entire being, controlling them from the inside and restraining their subconscious, before returning back into her own body. However, when she took over Mio, she didn't suppress her soul like normal, allowing her to communicate with Mio and in tandem show her all of her memories, explaining everything to her. It was during this moment that Mio Mio and Em officially swapped bodies with one another, leading to Mio fighting against her friends and warning the city, as well as Em being captured and being forced to experience her homecoming once again. It was also Em who was communicating to the others during that long month, mentioning at one point "my Noah," which in hindsight is actually referencing En. Nice little detail for you. Anyways, after Mio's execution, En proceeds to decapitate Noah, but before he gets the chance to, Mio uses the Mobius ability to commandeer Noah's body, sharing her gifted memories with him whilst also saving his life due to En being unable to complete his swing because of the risk that he could harm and end Mio, who he thought to be Em. With all that clarified, we can now take a closer look at the memories themselves. Whilst it isn't clear of the exact chronological events, we can make a few assumptions. For instance, the first memory we see is likely to take place within the city long ago, back when the entrance was located at Hope's Rest. There is also an Ouroboros stone present within this scene, which is probably how this iteration of Noah gained Ouroboros. This is then followed up with a scene of Mio dying in Noah's arms as Zed approaches the two of them. At first glance, this might appear to be a different version of Noah. And it is, except this is all still happening in the same timeline of the previous cutscene. This is due to this being a dream that Noah is having, much like how Uni and Ashera can remember things from their previous lives as well. This leads to Noah exiting his tent and greeting Mio before sitting down for some food. Another little detail you might not have noticed though is that these are actually Kavesi tents, meaning that either the city are thieves or this is probably a colony that was liberated by Ouroboros. Lastly, for this version of Noah, we see him and the other city folk being slaughtered by Zed as he continues monologuing. This battle is actually taking place inside of Origin, right at the nucleus, which is shown through these lights behind Zed. These are the same lights which are visible when the theatre flickers in Chapter 7, and is actually the core of Origin, meaning that Noah and the others have somehow managed to breach Origin before. Zed then disables Noah's blade, and the reincarnation process begins, concluding this iteration of the both of them. The next memory segment then takes place shortly after with another Noah, this time in a cold mountain looking area, possibly Capricorn Peak. Noah and Mio appear to be fleeing from some voices, feasibly due to Noah trying to escape from the passage of fate. Those voices are actually the same voice actors used for Lance and the rest of the main cast, likely representing Noah's companions in this era, as we have no reason to believe that these are our same 6 protagonists. This dude in the previous scene has the same voice as Tyon, for instance, but as far as we know, people don't change when they are reborn or reincarnate, so this is most definitely not Tyon. This memory then ends shortly afterwards with Noah and Mio freezing to death in the blizzard, representing the futility of resistance to Zed and the flow. That then leads us onto arguably the most important memory sequence, containing tons of subtle details, one in particular I'm sure you're very curious about.
What about babies? You guys got any babies?
Now sadly, we don't know very much about Noah and Mio's offspring, meaning that most of the details surrounding him are speculation. One of the biggest questions is the child's name, as it was even brought up once again that Noah is awful at naming, with him presumably giving his sword a silly name. Therefore, for the purposes of this video, when addressing the kid, I will call him Phil, cause I think it's funny. That is all. Getting back on topic, this particular memory seems to be an earlier one than all of the others, due to the lack of the city. Whilst the building and clothing does look near identical to that scene there, I'd also expect for the city to be hidden, or for there to be more buildings around this one, suggesting that this memory may take place before the city was even constructed. Afterwards, a few years have passed and Mio is reaching her homecoming, fading away before Noah and Phil's very eyes. Noah's time is up immediately after, and Phil has to go through the same thing once more, but this time having to deal with an incredibly emotional scene that still brings a tear to my eye. Noah turns to embers, drifting up and onwards into the sky before ending this scene. But there was something odd. Did you catch it? Noah's sword was actually left behind as he disappeared into the sky. Now this is very weird, as a blade is pretty much a part of the person's soul and can change shape depending on what type of weapon the wielder desires. That being the case, why didn't Noah's sword disappear? This is just speculation, but I believe that this sword is the actual real Lucky 7. Being a physical blade, it would make sense for it not to disappear along with Noah, and it also explains where the wacky name comes from. On top of that, this sword probably would have been taken up by Phil, who would have needed it to survive and keep himself alive. The sword ultimately would have then been passed down through the ages until it eventually fell into the possession of Riku, who would eventually end up giving it back to Noah. En, on the other hand, wields a fake version of the sword. As mentioned previously, blades can transform into different types of weapons via the owner's command, and therefore, because En used to wield the real Lucky 7 as Noah, he generated his blade to be identical to it, being his most familiar weapon type. This is the only way I can explain his blade disappearing in this scene, as well as magically transforming into the sword of origin during his final boss fight. The final memory segment we get to see is then with the Noah who becomes En. This whole segment depicts the moment that Noah gave up on saving this world and decided to protect what he held dear within the Endless Now. Zed was likely fearful of Noah's ability to return after death, likely due to his strength and the threat that he could pose in the future to the Endless Now, resulting in Zed tempting Noah to become a Mobius. Whilst initially hesitant at first, Zed offered Noah an ultimatum in the form of Mio joining his conquest for all eternity, enticing him to make this choice. This would come at the cost of the lives of those who live within the city, however, people who were technically Noah and Mio's descendants, their own flesh and blood, due to a version of them becoming founders and birthing the city in the past. Remember that Mobiuses receive all of their memories from their previous lives, and so, even if this N&M were versions years after the city's construction, they would still see these people as their descendants. If this wasn't enough, Noah was also giving up Ouroboros, as can be seen in his iris before transforming into En, showing just how far Noah would have gone to stay with Mio. Still, the decision to him was easy, and would it have been the same for our Noah if not for him, in his words, getting lucky and having something that every other version of Noah did not? Oh, you want to know what that thing is? Well, too bad! Wait till the next episode to find out!
That's all, folks.
Well, for the rest of you who weren't fooled by that last little segment, or checked the timeline and realised that there's still a bit of the video left, there's one more question to answer. Where is Rotbart? Scientists have wondered this for years, but have never been— Wait. I used this joke in the last video, didn't I? Well, Rotbart went missing, and his last known location was in Xenoblade 2. Now, if I remember correctly, he should live just around here— There's been a murder! Quickly, call the police! Wait, we're in Gormott in Xenoblade 2, then that means the police is—
Don't think you can take me! You're done!
Well. It seems somebody wandered into the wrong game. Too bad. Guess I'll just have to deal with you myself, because it just got personal.
Well, I hope you've all enjoyed this video and found it informative. If you have, please make sure to subscribe, as it helps me and the channel out a ton, and you'll always be notified when my next Xenoblade video drops. That said, I appreciate you all for watching and hope to catch you in the next one. This is JB, signing off.